Hello, good morning, and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde. Well, yeah, that talk is on of the president saying that I've been actually setting up a committee to that will help Nigeria pull 100 million Nigerians out of poverty over the next 10 years. Well, the one of the things that the president said was that if India could pull 271 million Indians out of poverty between 2006 and 2016, then it isn't anything that Nigeria also cannot do. Well, they said there's actually a national steering committee of what they call the National Poverty Reduction with Growth Strategy. Of course, it's going to be chaired by the vice president. The question that is going on a number of minds is not just the figures and not just the promises, but indeed the reality. When the president said that more than 10 million Nigerians have been pulled out of poverty over the past 2 years, the questions are there. A number of people are wondering, wait a minute, where are they? How has that happened? What part of the country are they, and all of that? And the question is not just going to stop. Perhaps we just wait to see exactly how this is going to be playing out. Unless people see the reality and of this, as of so many other things that people have talked.
I guess we'll wait then, because the committee they put in place certain measures to see how that is. But so I guess we'll just we'll hang on and see how all of those committees will do their job.
Maybe, by way of guidance or whatever. So many other things.
Oh yeah, well there are several references and reasons why it will be important to do a lot of those things and a lot more. You get to see them everywhere, today inclusive. I'll take a look at Vanguard newspaper, for instance. If you see the front page, UN body warns of impending famine in Nigeria. So you know that we really have got to be up and doing about ensuring that those things work. So famine. So which is, you know how it is when people have their backs against the wall, when hunger hits. Oh dear, it's not something you really want to experience. You also see the Twitter ban, FG defiant as ECOWAS court stops prosecution of users. Interference with Twitter violates human rights. That's from the ECOWAS court. They just gave that decision yesterday. Multinationals can't dictate to us. Ulai Mohammed announces government team to meet Twitter. Alleges Twitter helped crowdfund NSAS protests. Says other OTTs face suspension if, so the big if, which you may like to see yourself. Cautions against using VPN. Reps probe circumstances of suspension. Ban will birth harvest of misinformation, ascribed to Varsity Dawn. And then you see FG Twitter proposed dialogue, medicine after death. Tech experts just giving their opinion on what they think of that one right there. So that hearing went on yesterday. So for many who caught it, it was also all over the place. News media did cover that much. So let's see. There's several other items on the front page here. Many may have seen several. Court acquits 3 OPC men detained over Igongo crisis. Actually, also see, but the editors are speaking up. NBC amendment bills draconian anti-free press. Ascribed to editors that features on page 8 of the paper here today. Oh, there's a lot packed on the back page of Vanguard today. Raw opts out of Mexico friendly over fear of losing. Whoa, how can that be? As Boy takes charge That's what you also see here. I'm not finished. Grandpa is not dead.
Again, you didn't take Mr. and Mrs. Don't worry, I forgive you again today. The Nigerian Tribune is what is next right now. Lai, Malami, Pantami, Fashola to engage with Twitter over ban. Twitter promoting instability, act of terrorism, FG alleges. ECOWAS court restrains FG from prosecuting Nigerians for using Twitter. This is going to be interesting, how all of this is going to, play out eventually. Yeah, I mean, that's also a concern. I have considered that one as well. But you see, the part where it says Twitter is promoting instability, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, because there is this African proverb that there is no mucus without crying. Okay, so I mean, it is one thing that gives birth to the other, So what is it that is making people say the things that they say on Twitter? I mean, you come to my home, I didn't provide. Okay, I go to your home or I go to a place. There is no provision for where I can defecate, and I need to defecate. I'm sorry, I'm using that term. Okay, I need to do the needful, so to speak. I need to ease myself. I didn't provide a place for me to ease myself. Most certainly, I'm gonna have to do it one way or another. So I think that's what Twitter is. So, in my opinion, I'm just thinking. Maybe there is a need for us to look at the reasons, the causes, the things that is making people say the things that they say on Twitter. What is it that people are unhappy about? Has government been able to address that? Yes, the Minister of Information and Culture said that the US is also considering strategies to regulate the social media and all of that. But at the end of the day, it is about good governance for the people. Once they feel right, will there be an issue? Again, let's see how far this will go. And as for that restraining order, I'm really waiting, as you said, Chamberlain, for how government is going to address that. Now, the paper, the pictures on the front page are quite interesting. Of course, you see the fire right there, 2 tankers in flames. Yesterday, we brought you the breaking news shortly after it happened yesterday morning. So many other things you'll find on the front page. The second picture is right there, and the story is on page 26. National Assembly roof leaks during rainfall, lobby flooded. Do I even need to say anything about that?
You already did.
Because people are asking, okay, wait, what happened to that vote last year? That's the Nigerian Tribune this month. Oh, there is sports on the back page. I will floor Wilder, says Joshua. And so many other stories you'll find right there.
It's going to be interesting.
Honestly, will be.
Well, what a matchup that will be. Well, I guess we'll see. Look at New Telegraph. FG shifts, accuses Twitter of promoting terrorism. IPOB says firm wasn't asked for deleting president's tweets as lawmakers flee Lai Mohammed for the suspension. Then you see Malami, Information Minister Fashola, Pantami, others to dialogue with Twitter. ECOWAS court stops FG from prosecuting micro-blogging site users. That also features prominently here. Alleged 60 million naira fraud rocks Nigeria's Insurance Institute. Yeah, and then look at this at the bottom strip. Grazing routes. Malami failed to offer proper advice. Sage says Land Use Act superior to Gazette. Wow. And then while all of this is playing out, NLC to resume Kaduna strike. Mobilizes for nationwide industrial action. Oh dear. And you thought, can we afford this? Who knows? I guess we'll see what transpires. That's New Telegraph this morning.
Nigerian News Direct comes next, and this is the lead. Buhari writes Senate for 895.8 billion naira supplementary budget approval. That story is on page 23. Approves team to engage Twitter over suspension as ECOWAS court stops FG from imposing sanctions. That's what you have right there on the front page. The lead story of the paper this morning, and so many other stories that will pique your interest. That's the Nigerian News Direct this morning.
Okay, let's take a look at blueprints next. After 9 years of trial, Otedala's $3 million bait lands Farouk Lawan in jail. To spend 7 years in correctional center,
Whoa.
court rules ex-lawmaker received $500,000 bribe in 2 tranches. Defendants conduct established ingredients of corruption as ascribed to the judge several years down the line. So there you go. After 9 years, it says here. And then despite FG's intervention, NLC mobilizes for fresh strike in Kaduna. Says El Rufai backed out on agreement. So who knows? Twitter ban 476 online platforms devoted to pull down Nigeria. FG. Whoa. So there you go. That's what you see there, and they also talk about some increase in fuel strike, which is imminent. It says increase in fuel subsidy looms as price of Brent crude near $75. So I guess that conversation about subsidy or not may just never go away unless we get to a certain point and address or take certain issues headlong, they say. Well, that's blueprint this morning anyway.
The Leadership newspaper leads with media stakeholders emphasize need for press freedom and responsibility. That story is on page 4. And a number of writers there. Regulation shouldn't be punitive. Ascribed to Dr. C. There's need for self-regulation, says Dabiri Erewa. We shouldn't give terrorists oxygen, says Musawa, and media not FG's political enemy, as ascribed to the Guild of Editors. All of that you'll find on page 4 of the paper this morning. And right under the nameplate, CBN moves to crash price of rice amid inflation. Question in my mind is how? Well, you find the details on the front page, continues on page 4 of the paper this morning. And here is something that will interest us. Killings deplete police force as litigation stalls recruitment. Well,
what does that mean?
All of that you'll find the details on the inside pages. I guess it's the litigation, the issue between the Nigeria Police Force and Police Service Commission. You find the details on the inside pages. President promises citizen-led policing system. That's the rider to that story. You find the details on page 6 of the paper this morning.
Well, take a look at The Guardian next.
I think we should take
Is she there? Oh, okay. Markwe, let's go.
Good morning, Markwe.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen. Let's quickly take a look at this. Twitter's operation illegal despite ECOWAS court ruling. Federal government insists. I think there'll be huge questions as to the powers of the ECOWAS court and the reach, and whether or not, at the end of the day, many states, maintain their sovereignty despite signing up to these multilateral organizations. So let us, I think much later we'll be delving into the implications of that. Page 2, I will give you details. Twitter's operation illegal despite ECOWAS court ruling. Federal government insists. Threatens to suspend Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, others. That will be very interesting. Malami Fashola Mohammed lead federal government's delegation to engage Twitter. Over 44 billion naira lost as digital brand marketers decry continued suspension. ECOWAS court stops federal government from prosecuting citizens for using app. Respect court ruling on Twitter. Kuriwa tells Buhari's rep, social media, not food. Let's go back to old ways of life. Okay. I think some people will say, this train long left the station. You can't bring it back. Page 2 is where you'll find details. Look at the bottom here. Again, court orders federal government to pay Rivers, Akwa Ibom, $3.3 billion oil revenue. IYC applauds judgment, urges federal government to pay Bayelsa $951 million. So there's been a number of court judgments in the last couple of days. Even a community in Akwa Ibom State won some judgment against ExxonMobil, and the amount was quite substantial. Now, all of these monies, federal government to pay Rivers, Akwa Ibom, $3.3 billion. What will eventually happen? Will they get the monies, or will they continue to litigate until perhaps they get to the Supreme Court? Who knows? But look at this picture, worth 1,000 words, if you like. The National Assembly staff mopping the floor as rain flooded the lobby from a leaking roof, which disrupted plenary session in Abuja yesterday. They have details of the story for you on page 4. I don't know if you remember this controversy around National Assembly spending huge sums of money on renovation, because we know that eventually that money was approved. We don't know how far the renovation went, but there'll be huge questions to ask as to what exactly happened with the renovation if we're seeing this leaking roof saga as a result of rainfall, in Abuja. Let's leave it there for The Guardian. Gentlemen.
Well, if you take a look at this next one, you see here, Daily Times now, despite, look at that. Do we have it?
Daily Times newspaper. Well, it's Daily Times newspaper. It talks about, despite 37 billion naira renovation budget, National Assembly roof leaks.
37?
I mean, you remember.
That's billion?
Billion naira, that's what Marco just referenced now. Maybe she saw the crystal ball.
Those images, I mean, it wasn't just, the ordinary kind of leak. This is massive.
It is. I'm wondering, the question on my mind was, has the contract been awarded? Well, the budget has been approved, or at least it was proposed last year. Has the contract been awarded? Has the job been done? This is the middle of the year. Someone reminded me yesterday, by the way, that we have spent 183 days in the year. We're left with another 183 days. So half year 2021 has the budget for the renovation of the National Assembly, which many, of course, raised eyebrows at last year. Has it been awarded? Has the job started? Has it been done? Those are questions that we hope someone will be able to answer for us this morning.
Okay, let's take a look at Daily Independent next then. So that is the next one. So you see, despite court's ruling, FG insists on licensing Twitter others. So that's what is on Daily Independence this morning. So if you can't see that, we might as well just you see, it says threatens to suspend Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, others. So ECOWAS court bans government from prosecuting Twitter users. Buhari okays FG team to dialogue with microblogging platform. So that will be Daily Independent today. So there you go. That's what you see on the front pages this morning. So that wraps it up with a look at some of the dailies here today. What an interesting one. See lots of reactions about what transpired yesterday, and you keep wondering, is it the same medium at the same platform? Well, I guess you see all sorts of articles about what happened.
Oh, we're even yet to get the list of it. But you know, that picture on the front page of the Daily Times, which we didn't, get to, is actually very, very touching. The question, and of course, it's the same on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. I'm wondering what we can do to forestall, a recurrence of such things, because it is really, really sad. I'm wondering how much money has been lost, the lives that have been lost. Someone showed a video of personal cars of different people that were caught in that fire. It's very, very touching, Chamberlain. I just hope that there is something that one will be able to do to forestall that. Kade was counting for us yesterday. It was just how many days, just days after we had a similar fire of an LPG gas tank in Lagos, and then that one. Most certainly fuel related as well.
Well, there you go. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us.
As directed by the leadership of the House of Representatives, 5 committees meet with the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, to unravel the circumstances leading to the Twitter suspension and its legality.
The platform of choice.
The minister begins by explaining the reasons behind the suspension and alleges complicity of Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey in the EndSARS protest.
The same Twitter played a very unsettling role by making available its platform to retweet, not just retweet the messages of the EndSARS protesters, but raising funds for the EndSARS protesters before it was hijacked by hoodlums. Jack Dorsey crowdfunded the activities of EndSARS. That's why we believe that Twitter's mission in Nigeria is suspect.
He goes further to quote laws which empowered the federal government to issue the suspension.
But until so incorporated, the foreign company shall not carry on business in Nigeria or exercise any powers of a registered company. That's the Section 78(1) of the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020.
But lawmakers question the timing of the suspension, which came just after the president's tweet was taken down, and are also concerned about the negative impact on businesses which depend on Twitter.
The pressure that people have is that the Twitter took down a statement that was made by the president, just like how they took down a statement that was made by Donald Trump of America.
We have to consider the economic dethronement of the mass of Nigerian youths who live and survive trading on Twitter, doing so many other things. We did not suspend the activities of Twitter because they deleted Mr. President's tweet. Not at all. Have we taken into consideration Nigerians doing business on Twitter? And the answer is yes. There are other platforms, Facebook, Google Hangout, WhatsApp, for people to use.
The Minister of Information says that the federal government has approved a committee to engage with Twitter, and that as part of the conditions for lifting the suspension, Twitter must first register with the Corporate Affairs Commission and get a license, and that subsequently all the conditions will follow. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Indeed, you have seen our guest there. We have with us Mr. Adebayo Shitu, who is the former Minister of Communications and former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Oyo State. Sir, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
It's my very big pleasure being here again.
It's good to see you.
I'm okay, I thank God.
Well, the issues are a lot to chew on. I mean, listening to the Minister for Information there, appearing before the House Committee set up to look into the matter. there's some of the things that he said that a number of Nigerians will question. So, for instance, when he says that it wasn't because Twitter pulled down the president's tweet, that's why Twitter was suspended in Nigeria. Some people will have huge questions about that. First and foremost, what are your comments on that?
Well, you see, it is the Yorubas have an adage. They say, "Eniti obani wo yewu, kulimontan shenibe." Translated into English is, if you are not in a room with me, you most probably wouldn't know what is going on there. Lai Muhammad is in government. Lai Muhammad has information that most of us Nigerians may never have. So we must continue to presume that government and government officials are telling the truth as they see it. A lot of these things cannot be in the marketplace. So for me, this system of cynicism by Nigerians about everything that government does is not in the best interest of the security and stability of our nation.
Yeah, but speaking more honestly and more objectively, when the president's statement was removed and the minister was questioned, he did indicate, he defended very strongly why the president made those statements, and he did indicate that it was not going to be the end. So when Twitter was suspended, it didn't come to many people, even though we doubted that it was going to get to that extent, but it didn't come to many people as a surprise. So if that is the case, can he really say that it wasn't because the president's statement was
I have said it.
was pulled
Information
down?
that is available to government, we may never have it. That's one. Secondly, was it even right for Twitter to, take down the statement of the president, which must have been made in reaction to some other thing which was prevailing at that time? That in itself is an act of bad faith on the part of Twitter. And come to think of it, you don't look at the president as one Nigerian. He represents the sovereignty of this country.
Lawyers have had different things to say about that. First and foremost, I know we spoke to a lawyer on this program, and he's a senior advocate of Nigeria. And he said that the president did not relate with Twitter. The president's presence on Twitter was not done as a president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
But was done as Muhammadu
Buhari. No, let me land. As Muhammadu Buhari. And that's the name on his Twitter handle. I mean, and some people will say that there is a differentiation because in the United States, there is the handle of the president of the United States. And oftentimes when that handle is done with that particular president, they usually archive that particular handle. The next president has another handle apart from his personal handle. You are a lawyer.
You see, it's a matter of style. You may have 2, 3, 4, even 10 senior advocates who may disagree on an issue. It is only when a judge has given a decision one way or the other that you can say this is the state of the law. So the fact that some lawyers have disagreed, the fact that something happened in the U.S., we are not in the U.S., we are Nigerians, and we have a president in Muhammadu Buhari. So when he makes a statement, particularly that relates to the governance of this country, I mean, it would be preposterous for anybody to say that he didn't make that statement in this capacity as president. I mean, if a president says, we are going to buy 10 aeroplanes for Nigerian Air Force, and somebody says because he didn't put President Muhammad Buhari, so he made that statement only in his private capacity. I mean, I think that is less than logical.
Well, the president, you must admit, though, wears many hats. I don't want to go into that now. I don't want to stretch the argument because, some people say that the president wears many hats. So he's his father, his husband, he's many things to many different people, depending on his relationship. When the president is dealing
with his wife at home,
indeed,
he doesn't relate to Nigeria as such. It may not, but it may also relate to Nigeria. I mean, because consequences, if the president does this, I mean, it has implications, particularly depending on what time wear, and all of that.
Well, you wear many hats. You wear many hats as well. You have been Minister for Communications. You understand the implications of this on the economy, this particular suspension. You understand how difficult it is to build a following on different social media platforms. You know, when the minister says, oh, we have considered these economic implications to Nigerians who use Twitter and that they can go and use other platforms, you know how difficult it is. The fact that you have 200,000 followers on Twitter doesn't mean that you'll have the same number of following on Instagram, where you might have no presence, or maybe that's not your preference. When you look at those kinds of implications, do you really think that the federal government has been fair to small businesses who use Twitter, for instance, for advertisement?
Well, I think from the beginning, a few things have not been okay. For instance, the government talks of the fact that Twitter was actually acting, unlawfully because it was not registered. I have not looked at the law, requiring registration of establishments like that. But if there's indeed a law, particularly with either NBC or NCC, because these have to be looked into. The fact that something has been done in a wrong manner, even for 1,000 years, does not legitimate it, does not make it lawful. So and I'm happy that at least the federal government has given an opening for Twitter. Twitter made the first initiative to want to engage with the federal government. And the president promptly set up a committee of very senior government officials, including, more than 50% of who are lawyers, very senior lawyers, to look into this. And I hope that something good will come out of this.
Honorable former minister, I haven't even gotten to the question of licensing, because the question of licensing is another very tricky kettle of fish. We understand how Play Stores work, and we know that they are an international thing. The moment you have a mobile device, you have internet data connection, then you can you can have the Play Store, whatever device you're using on your phone. Are we going to ask all of those apps, for instance, to now start getting licensing from the different countries?
If the law says so, they must comply. If the law says so, we have to look at the law.
Wouldn't we have to at least learn from how it operates in other places?
What is happening here is not limited to Nigeria. A number of countries are also trying to regulate, because if you are doing something that is capable of affecting me positively or negatively, I must not be disinterested in whether you act rightly or you act wrongly. These are issues, because it is easy to be carried away by emotions or sentiments.
But considering what I'm asking you to look at is considering just how apps work. How realistic is it? And there are over 1 million apps. How realistic is it for us to now say, for any app to operate in Nigeria, you will have to come and register with us and get a license before our own citizens who might be able to, but even if it's something that's going to benefit or leapfrog certain things that we do here, isn't it a tad? Even the banks, all the banks in Nigeria, most of them, or let me say all, usually have their own apps. Are you now going to start telling all of them to go and get registered and be licensed?
Before banks start using apps, they must have been registered one way or the other. So if the law, what I'm saying, if the law requires you to get registered before you operate, of course, it is only sensible that once you register and once you follow all the regulations, you won't have a problem. All of these companies are in business.
You don't think that sort of law will be obnoxious?
It will
be a cumbersome law.
It will become cumbersome only when it is challenged in court, because Nigeria as a country has all the powers to make laws. When these laws are made, particularly by the National Assembly, and assented to by, Mr. President, it becomes a law. Once it becomes a law, anybody who has any objection would have the, privilege of going to court to challenge it. And so we will have to rely on the outcome of such, challenges. So there's nothing which is impossible. There's nothing which is, obnoxious with regard to the power of the country as a sovereign country to make laws.
So I see you wearing your hats now as an attorney general, as a former attorney general and as a lawyer.
Thank God.
But I'm asking, as a former Minister of Communications, you know, if you were to review the implications of that, how will it hamper the development of a digital economy?
Look, there's nothing which is, you know, which is very difficult to do. If I'm Minister of Communications, I must be guided by laws. If you are a Minister of Commerce, if you are Minister of Commerce, or you are Minister of Works, or whatever ministry, the law comes first.
Indeed.
It is the law that guides every other thing.
Is the law meant to impede our development, or is it supposed to aid and ensure that we do not...
If you are in business of even developing society, and the law says you should get registered, why should you have a problem getting registered? I mean, how long does it take to get registered? I mean, these are issues because the law and order is one very important...
No, to get registered is different from getting a license.
No,
they are two different things.
They are not they are not different. You get registered through your licensing. Let me tell you, maybe you would say that, for instance, if you take MTN comes into Nigeria, registers with the Corporate Affairs Commission.
Indeed.
Then it applies for a license.
Exactly.
These things work together.
They are two different things.
These things work together.
They work together, but they are two separate things.
Agreed. They are two different things. But if the law says those processes must be, you know, gone through, then it is only proper for the sake of ensuring law and order in society. You go through the process, and once you go through the process, you come free to operate within the laws which guides you.
I'm not saying that Nigeria doesn't have powers to make whatever laws suit it. I mean, for its own. I'm only asking whether or not you see implications, what the implications are for everything, for every action that we take. There will be an advantage and there will be a disadvantage, no matter how well intended that particular action is. If the federal government says, henceforth, any social media company or any company at all that is going to have an app operating in Nigeria will have to obtain a license, there will be implications for that.
You see,
as a former Minister of Digital Economy, what implications do you see?
Well, I don't. You see, what is important, which we must remind ourselves, is that when you are talking of process of lawmaking, it's not about one man making a law. It's about a national assembly. And in the case of Nigeria, you have more than 400, representatives of the people making the law. Before laws are made, there will be public hearing. People who are interested one way or the other would come forward to make their representation. It is after they've gone through this meal that the law gets enacted by the National Assembly and goes to the executive for its assent. If for one reason or the other the executive feels, uneasy, it may return it and say, look, we are not comfortable with this. But once the law becomes law, after all this, you don't start talking of maybe it will be inconveniencing to one operator or one subscriber or whatever. So I think we should look at it from the point of view that we have in Nigeria. We want to ensure that Nigeria is properly governed by laws, and in the process, I mean, those making these laws are also Nigerians. They would have taken care of all the sentiments, all the sensibilities, all the potential problems, So once it becomes a law, until it is challenged successfully in court, you don't start, creating imaginary problems as if these problems are insurmountable going through, proper processes.
As it stands right now, there is no law preventing Twitter and all the other social media apps from operating in Nigeria, is there?
For now, I do not know of any. But what I'm saying is government has the right to initiate, considering, issues which arise in the processes.
Can government just say we have banned, the executive arm of government say we have banned or we have suspended an entity and that's it?
If they don't have that power, they would not,
I'm asking you as a lawyer
do
you think they have such powers?
No, I don't know what the situation of the law is because it has never come before me as a lawyer, and I've never had cause to look into the law to see what guides, these operators or what does not guide it. But our government, the government of Nigeria has come up to raise issues and to, give an inkling of what should operate, and until we go through those processes. I mean, one of the issues that has arisen as a result of what government has done now is the fact that some people went to the ECOWAS court. The ECOWAS court has made an interim order. We would have to wait and see what is government's response in the judicial, system. What will be their, reactions to it. I'm
sure my colleagues will have questions for you, gentlemen.
Yes, indeed. Well, at the moment, but more so in consideration of that interim order, does that then mean that, or better say, let me put it this way. Yes, government has said Twitter needs to be incorporated in Nigeria for them to function as a foreign company. But when they then say that, well, if anyone uses that media platform, they will be prosecuted. What laws do you think that they might be relying on to prosecute anyone who does so?
Well, I do not represent the Ministry of Justice on this program. The government has said it will prosecute. It is when we get to court, it is when they initiate that process of prosecution that both the general public and those being prosecuted will know what will be their defenses. For now, I will not want to put myself in any system which would, which will make me look like somebody who is talking out of ignorance.
Yeah, but as a very senior lawyer, is it the way it works such that if one is said to have committed an offense, if one is arrested, it's only when you get to court, then you know what laws you will be facing, haven't been arrested?
You will not know under which, it will be difficult for you to know under which law you are being prosecuted. And it is not for me to guess under which law. So I would rather wait to see under what law government wants to prosecute before. I mean, if I was defending a client who's being prosecuted, of course I would have to wait. I wouldn't want to jump the gun.
But is it normal for anyone?
That would be the more cautious approach to this issue.
But is it normal for anyone to be said to have been arrested based on a law that he or she doesn't know about until you get to court?
For now, is known to have been arrested. When a person is arrested, you will be told the offense he has committed. And you don't start presuming that this law or that law will be the basis for your arrest or potential prosecution. So it's a waiting game. Let us wait and see.
So, in other words, you are saying that unless there is a basis, a legal basis, the police cannot go to anyone and say you are hereby under arrest for what? Because before you can be prosecuted in court, you need to first of all be arrested. My assumption, correct me if I'm wrong, is before anyone can be prosecuted in court. Before anyone can be arrested, the person will have to be, the basis for the arrest has to be read out to the person. So and it's only after an arrest has been made that someone can be taken to court. So do I wait to get to court before I am told the reason I am arrested?
Of course, you won't know under which law you are being arrested. You will be informed of what offense you have committed and which law you have violated. And so you have to wait till then.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. I mean, the person is going to read the rights to me, read the offense to me. You are hereby under arrest for what exactly? Before I am taken to court, right?
At that point, even before getting to court at the police station, you'll be informed of what, under what law you have been arrested. So it's better to wait till then.
But if you look at Section 3612 of the Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, it says, subject as otherwise provided by this Constitution, a person shall not be convicted of a criminal offense unless that offense is defined and the penalty thereof is prescribed in a written law. And in this subsection, a written law refers to an act of the National Assembly or a law of a state, any subsidiary, legislation, or instrument under the provisions of a law. So, it means they can't be arrested if there's no such law.
Look, the law is very clear. That provision of the Constitution is very, very clear. It says under a law, they will tell you the law under which you are being arrested and under which you are being taken to court. Until then, you don't have to bother your head.
Fully then. So what then do you make of...
There is no such law.
So what then do you make of that, of the position of the ECOWAS court, you know, that made that ruling?
And I know I have not committed an offense, and I know there are processes he must follow by arresting me, telling me under what law I have offended. So why must I bother my head? And why must you bother your head if there's no law?
People must be bothered because they fear the government could bully people.
How would they bully? They must go to court.
Government is government.
They must still take.
Could bully.
Government cannot arrest somebody and just jail him.
Yes.
There are procedures.
It is because there is no law. That's the reason why the Attorney General said when you get to court, you will know under what law you have been prosecuted.
Not only on this matter, on every matter. Mm-hmm. If you are suspected to have committed an offense, you are arrested and told what offense you have committed.
Indeed. But lawyers know that the laws are not hidden. They are not made in
Do you know how many laws we have in this country?
Indeed. They are
Do you know how many laws we have in this country?
We remember the laws when the situation arises. In
So,
this particular situation right now, what law exists to prosecute people?
Let us wait. Let us wait for those seeking to prosecute to come and tell us under what law we have been arrested. It's a very simple matter as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, gentlemen, sorry to interrupt you.
Let me just quickly, take on that question I asked earlier. So, what, in your opinion, then, are the implications of that ruling of the ECOWAS court that says the federal government should hold all action against anyone until the suit has been determined by the ECOWAS court?
I want to imagine. Can I come in?
Yes, please, go ahead.
I want to imagine that those who went to court to preempt a potential action of government to start arresting people. As of today, we have not heard of anybody who has been arrested on the basis of that. And I want to believe that our government, being a law-abiding government, would respect the order of the ECOWAS court, because that court is a court of competent jurisdiction which Nigeria has assented to. So, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think government would do anything untoward. Government, if government has any objection to that, ruling, it has processes of appealing the ruling.
Does that then, because we thought that that provision of the 1999 Constitution is meant to ensure that there's no ambiguity in all of those, such that government cannot just come up and arrest anyone for a law that is not even stipulated or properly spelled out. We thought that was why that provision is clearly there.
He's still talking. I'm not hearing him.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, you can come again.
Yeah, but we thought that that provision is properly spelled out to avoid any ambiguity or arbitrariness of any organization or government just arresting anyone for any laws that have not been properly spelled out, perhaps in this case.
I want to restate my position. Those who went to court to preempt a possible action by government. That court has given a ruling. I believe government will respect it. That is one. Number two, if somebody threatens to arrest me for an offense and I know I have not committed offense, I will not be apprehensive of anything. I will have to wait and see under what law I will be arrested. If there's no such law, why should anybody bother about it? About
in other words,
possible arrest by government.
Oh, so does that suggest that this is an empty threat?
Honestly. Well, I don't know. I don't have comment. I don't know whether it is an empty threat or not. What I'm saying, and I expect that you would understand this. Your position is that there's no law. I don't know of any law under which they want to arrest. So if I don't know of any law and you are sure there was no law, why must we be apprehensive that government will start arrest? If government arrests, will they not take you before a court of law? Or when they take you to a court of law, will they just say that because Mr. President wants you arrested? Will they not bring up a law, with which you can, contest it, or against which you can contest your arrest? And if there's an unlawful arrest, of course, there are legal remedies also for that.
Okay. Do you think that? Okay. I hope I can get this in before the break. Do you think there was proper consideration on the economy aspect of this now? Because when government says there are other social media platforms that people can use, many would have thought that they would have put in place measures, because for those whose revenue depend on this platform, who are not on those other platforms, it suggests that there was no consideration, no provision on the part of government to ensure that those businesses don't lose as much as they are losing today.
With due respect to you, that question is neither here nor there. What is important is there a law in existence regulating activities of group of people or certain businesses? If the laws are there, the laws must be enforced, no matter the consequences of that. That is my understanding of the situation. So, but if there's no law, of course, nobody should feel threatened.
Wait, in other words,
by any possible action of government.
No, it's not about people feeling threatened now. I'm talking about the economies, the businesses, the MSMEs that have been hit as a result of the suspension
Honestly,
of Twitter use in Nigeria.
I don't have any facts about that. I don't have facts about all statistics of, businesses or whatever. I don't have. What I'm looking at is just the law, the law perspective, and I know that if there's no law, nobody can be threatened.
All right, we'll show you some piece of information when we return in just a moment after the break. Do stay with us.
Take a listen to this audio conversation.
Yes, I don't bring it to my house.
Okay, you take it to your house?
No, I don't want to bring it to my house. It's a lot of money.
Yes. So where? Because I am rushing to the airport now.
Yeah, they're at the airport in the aircraft.
And before they can come over now, unless I send somebody to the airport, I was coming. I can't. By the time they come, I should be in the chambers. I have a lot of things to do myself.
Is there anybody you trust I can give it to, or maybe I should postpone my China till tomorrow?
No, it's okay. I would arrange with someone. Let me give you his number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
His number is 080.
Hold on. 080.
36. 51. 33. 55.
What's his name?
Yeah, TJ.
Sorry?
TJ.
TJ?
No, TJ. TJ.
Okay.
Yeah, TJ.
So I'll give him the balance. That's
okay.
$2.5 million, yeah?
That's right. Just hold on. I'm calling him to be sure he's finished.
This is the genesis of what has culminated in the conviction of Farouk Lawan, the former chairman of the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee on Fuel Subsidy Probe. The former lawmaker faced a 3-count charge bordering on asking for and collection of $500,000 bribe from the chairman of Zenon Petroleum and Gas Limited, Mr. Femi Otedola. For 8 solid years since 2013, both the prosecution and defense counsel tried to prove their case before the court. But almost 6 years after the case was transferred to Justice Angela Otaluka of the FCT High Court in 2015, It's now Judgment Day. Delivering her verdict, Justice Otaluka affirms that both the evidence before the court and the testimonies from defense and prosecution counsel established the case against the defendant and found him guilty on counts 1, 2, and 3. The defendant is accordingly sentenced to a 7-year jail term for count 1, another 7 years for count 2, and 5 years for count 3, sentences the judge says will run concurrently. The court also orders the defendant to pay the sum of $500,000 to the federal government account. However, the defense counsel expresses his displeasure with the judgment and vows to appeal it.
We are clearly dissatisfied with the judgment delivered by the court for very serious legal issues, and there is no doubt that we are appealing the judgment.
This conviction may likely not be the end of the case, but for now, the former lawmaker is driven away from the court premises in a Hilux van belonging to the Nigeria Correctional Service.
All right, I was talking about the economic implication of this, and I had to reference NetBlocks. They are an organization. They cost the estimates of the economic impact of an internet disruption, that's including mobile data blackout or app restriction. And they have looked at this, and at the moment, they estimate the amount Nigeria has lost as a result of this suspension of the microblogging platform Twitter to be in the region of 37 billion naira. So clearly, that's an amount that the economy cannot just afford to lose like that. So yes, much as government is trying to ensure we still have a country, but can they afford to gloss over this amount of money as a result of this suspension?
Well, I really don't have any idea about it, and I want to believe that those in government, particularly the economic players, the Minister of Finance and National Planning, would be the appropriate people to look into that. I'm a man of law, I'm not a man of figures or finances.
Well, I know lawyers also talk about the law with a human face, and having been in government, so you understand the thinking, such that it doesn't come across to people as though it wasn't properly thought out. There was perhaps only one-dimensional nature of thought that went into this one. That's the way some people think this is.
Well, it has happened already, and efforts are being made to reconcile both government and Twitter, and I think we should give that a chance. Once the negotiations succeed, I think, the economy in that direction will bounce back.
Okay. If I could just, there was a report that was played while we were on break about the long-drawn court process involving Farouk Lawan. Eventually, he's got to do his time now, even though the lawyers have said that they are going to appeal all of that. But perhaps being a lawyer yourself, many have time and again spoken about the way justice is delivered, the length of time that this took. If you could perhaps start from there, is this the best that we could get? Is there any thought that, hey, who knows, perhaps this judgment could have come a lot quicker than it did? Because if it stays this long, many think, look, there's too much time that goes into this before this kind of judgment was delivered.
Well, it's very unfortunate that our legal process grinds very slowly, but it grinds very surely also. I believe the authorities are taking steps to reform the process and abridge time and all of that. It is often said that it takes two to tango. Even if a judge is anxious to expeditiously handle a case, he won't completely have control over what lawyers will do. because regulations about legal procedures, provides for time. There's a time to, serve a notice. There's a time within which to respond. And then you have so many interlocutory applications coming in from lawyers. At times you have, lawyers who, may find a way, one way or the other, to terminate the case, very, quickly, thinking, for instance, there could be preliminary objections. It takes time. When a preliminary objection is argued in court, there will be a ruling. That ruling could be appealed and all of that. But I think that both the Nigerian Bar Association and the judicial authorities, are brainstorming to ensure that, processes are breached. All of this has been done or is being done, so as to ensure that justice is not destroyed on the altar of, timeousness, But I think at the end of the day, we have gotten to the end of that case. It's very unfortunate that it has happened, but, I think all persons affected one way or the other would have learned lessons, from it.
Okay, even though they said they will appeal, so I guess we'll wait and see what happens as they proceed with that one. But then, let me bring this in. A couple of days ago, young people in your party did say that they seem to be getting the short end of the stick. They want a lot more political inclusion. They seem to, they're not satisfied with the status quo at the moment. I mean, having been there yourself, I think you were about 26 when you were in the State House of Assembly. Do you think they have a point?
Well, yes and no. No, because I, taking myself as a very humble example, I got into the House of Assembly at age 26, the time I became a lawyer in 1979. I didn't need anybody's prodding, to contest election. The Yorubas have this adage, Omo to ba sinpa lobi e ma ngbe. It is a child that raises the hands that gets lifted up. It doesn't come on the platter of gold. So I want to believe that the initiative of the young ones by bringing themselves together is a good thing. But I'm happy that the vice president actually advised that you don't expect that you will suddenly be able to push aside, those who have been there. See yourselves not just as leaders of tomorrow, but partners in the progress and development of today. Nobody excludes anybody deliberately. The political atmosphere is a competitive atmosphere. Everybody must compete, for relevance. And I'm happy that at several levels, a lot of young ones who are active and intelligent, are coming up. But from my own little experience, I always advise, having regard to my personal experiences, that it is always better to develop a second address before coming into politics. I recall that, when I came in, after 4 years, I became a member of the House at 26. I became a commissioner for Home Affairs Information at age 30. And then the Buhari first coming came and, drove us out. If I was not a lawyer, I would have been in big trouble. Because for those who did not have professions, to fall back on, it became problem. Social, they became maladjusted. They couldn't, their social status had risen to a level. But after that, when, the thing crumbled, it became a problem for them to decide where do they go. There were no more salaries. They could not go back to their teaching jobs and all of that and so on. So I always advise that there's really no need to really rush. Try and develop a profession, try and develop a business, so that when the bubble bursts in politics, when there's no going forward, you have something to fall back on.
Well, you can also
want to encourage as many youths who want to participate in politics that once they are really ready to come in, nobody stops them. The process is competitive. You know, they must be ready to compete with all others. And, if anybody, like the Yorubas would say. So they are welcome, and the current government and our party is prepared to continue to encourage the youth to come in.
Well, clearly you would also have avowed to the fact that, agree to the fact that quite a number of youths in the country today, not just in your party, very well established and quite organized. Some reference the NSAS example as how youth can organize themselves. There are those who will say that it's a different kettle of fish altogether from the Second Republic to this Fourth Republic that we're in now. Some would say that the role of money, politics, of the role of money in politics today is a lot more than when you came in at the time. And there are those who argue that the Nigerian youths are not financially strong enough to take on government, to venture into politics the way you did back in time and the way those who have the money bags have it today. What would you say to them?
Well, I agree that money has become a very big problem, not only to the youth, I must say, even to most elders who are interested and capable of participating in the political process. We have situations now that, and it is not the party that is asking really for the money. It's the people, the electorate. You can imagine a situation where you go for campaigns, and what is interesting to the electorate is not the ideas that you want to establish in government. It's not how you want to, elevate them, socially, economically, and otherwise. But what do you have for them? So that really is a problem. And there's no way government can control that. What government and the party can control is, okay, youths, you want to contest election, okay, don't pay for forms. But they cannot, prevent the public, the electorate, from making demands on you. So that really is a problem, and it is a national problem, is a social problem, which, I don't know the solution to it. Maybe when we get to a level that poverty has been drastically reduced in society, when people would appreciate their integrity, their dignity, their humanness, that look, I don't have a price tag. If you want me to vote for you, come and convince me as to your capabilities, your past experience, and your potential to improve society. Well, now, I doubt if there's any solution to that.
Well, there are those who would also be saying, like, if that is your position, then it will look like there is no way for the youth to go then. I mean, if the poverty problem is still as big as it is, then there is no way for the youth to go. But you also say that there is a way somewhere. So what would you recommend what would you be suggesting to the youths, whether in your party or not, who are completely tired of the way things are and have enough ideas to at least try to make a change? What counsel would you be giving to those youths now?
Well, my counsel, my advice is that they should continue to try and persuade as many people in their localities as possible. I know that for young people just coming in, maybe the first level they want to come in is either the local government, the councilorships, the chairman of local government, and maybe House of Assembly, House of Rep. Again, the truth is, the problem is not, limited to the youth. There are several people who have passed, the age of 40, who also want to contest and may not have the wherewithal. So it's a national problem that, honestly, a lot of it will also now depend on luck. If you come from a community or a society where you can really, get people to convince the people that, even if you don't have money now, you hold greater promise to bring about development to your immediate community, perhaps you could be lucky.
So, again, I don't want to tie this to the social media, but some people would have said that it would have been a very veritable tool to be able to reach out to the young people, to invite them, to engage them, to feel the tempo, and even to get them to come along, in whatever journey that the federal government is doing. Do you think that this disparity, because some people will say that what they also seem to understand from what has happened is that there is a huge divide between those who govern us and the majority of the governed who happen to be the youthful population. Do you think that we have missed an opportunity somewhat with our approach to how we have handled Twitter in Nigeria?
Well, I mean, Twitter is just a recent development. How does that affect that age-long problem of social inequalities, of people not having money? A lot of these youths don't even have access to education. A lot of them cannot pay school fees. They don't have parents who are buoyant enough to be able to pay school fees. A lot of them have to eke out a living. And I'm sorry to say this. I know that a lot of females are also, in order to acquire education, in order to have access, in order to have funding for education, may do a number of antisocial things, to get it. So this is a very big problem. I also agree now that in view of the fact that the population of the youth is so huge, you are talking about, more than 60% of the population, maybe using the social media, and it's not about Twitter alone. The more popular thing is WhatsApp and, a few other, applications. Maybe through that, mobilizations could be done to ensure. But our party and the government does not have any problem about anybody, whether youth or elderly, coming into the political atmosphere. It's about the society. It's about being able to massively persuade people to,
I ask that
patronize you.
In the face of, this is what the dailies are reporting this morning, that they're threatening to suspend Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, others. When you see stories like this...
I don't know. This is what I'm reading from the press. I'm sure that if you have 10 newspapers and you look at that same story, you may find different stories on that same issue. So, with due respect to the president,
let us go. Let us assume without considering that this is the main story, right?
I don't know. I don't know what is, if there is any sort of threat, I don't know. But what
would you think is a wise approach?
To do what? They won't threaten without, if nobody has offended, nobody will be threatened. I don't imagine that they'll just be blanket, No,
as a result, because the federal government, just a moment, sir. Yes. The federal government insists that it was not the Twitter pulling down the president's statement. So we're assuming that there was no offense, and as such, it is a need to regulate. If that is now the situation, the chances are very high that this need to regulate could extend to these other platforms, and there could be
I don't see it
a blanket suspension.
I don't see anybody who really wants to be in business. There's no place where businesses are done without regulations. I could have my car, for instance. I could have my money, buy my car. The fact that I have my money and I buy my car by myself does not mean I could drive without taking driving license or taking vehicle license. If I want to do, maybe any other business for that one, I'm a lawyer, trained lawyer. I have to pay fees in the court. I have to pay Nigerian Bar Association fees and all of that. So there are several regulations guiding virtually everything. It's often said that where there's no law, there's no offense. And to that extent, I want to believe, that government would not just do anything in vacuum. If there are no laws, there cannot be offenses, there cannot be penalties.
Well, we have to thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Early this morning. Adebayo Shitu is a former Minister of Communications and former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Oyo State.
It's my very big pleasure.
Thank you once again for coming on Sunrise Daily. Well, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll be switching to another problem which affects young people mostly. Do stay with us.
June 26 is World Drug Day, and the man at the helm of affairs at the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency He is given the scorecard of the agency since its assumption of office in January this year.
Efforts have translated into encouraging results.
He has good news to share on the fight against illicit use of drugs in Nigeria.
The agency's offensive action against drug cartels across the country, launched some 5 months ago, has yielded over 2,000 arrests of drug traffickers and at least 5 drug barons, the seizure of over 2 million kilograms of assorted illicit drugs. We have filed over 2,000 drug cases in court and recorded over 500 convictions in this time.
There have been calls in recent times for cannabis to be legalized in Nigeria, but General Maro says it's a no deal for the NDLEA.
Ondo State is the greatest grower of this substance, and the NDLEA will continue to burn any farm that we find and arrest the perpetrators of cannabis. It is dangerous, it is bad for our health, we will not agree.
According to a 2018 report on drug use in Nigeria by the UNODC, the prevalence of use of illicit substances as of 2017 stood at 14.3 million people aged 15 to 64 years, with 10.6 million said to be cannabis users, 4.6 million pharmaceutical opioid users, and 238,000 on amphetamines.
This is to strengthen action and cooperation.
But it seems the figure may have increased, as explained by the UNODC country representative.
The use of pharmaceutical opioids for non-medical purposes, so essentially tramadol, codeine, and similar pharmaceutical psychotropic substances that are being used for non-medical reasons. There's about 7 million users in total presently in Nigeria. Again, tendency growing.
As the fight against use of illicit substances in Nigeria continues, there's a need for more awareness on the danger of drug abuse, especially among young people. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Well, the World Drugs Day is in a few days. 26th of June is when it is going to be celebrated, or at least commemorated. And we have with us Dr. Oliver Stolpe, who is the country representative of the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime, with us in the studio. Mr. Stolpe, welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Pretty grim statistics that we have seen for Nigeria. At least over 14 million drug abusers in the country. I don't want to say users. There's drug use and there's drug abuse. And I'm sure that's what you're concerned about, the abuse of drugs, and also the fact that Nigeria used to be a transit nation. I don't know if we're now, it would seem that increasingly we're graduating to a user nation. Unlike before that we used to be known as a transit route. What are your thoughts? What are the UNODC's greatest concerns with Nigeria, especially with drug abuse?
Hard to pinpoint it to one specific concern. We are in general concerned about the sheer number of drug users that we have in this country, about 3 times the global average. And we are severely concerned about the insufficient access to quality treatment and counseling, which of course many of them would need in order to deal with their health condition of drug use. And we are concerned about the projections, because presently, merely due to the population demographic developments, we are estimating that in only 8 years from now, the population of drug users will have been increased by 40%. So that would mean for Nigeria, for example, in Africa, that would mean for Nigeria that we would have around 20 million drug users. And we're already at this stage having a hard time responding to their health needs, responding to their drug counseling needs, giving them the necessary access. And we should also not forget that this is affecting men and women in a very different way. So men comparatively have much easier access to treatment. Just to give you an idea, 1 in 4 drug users is a woman, so roughly a quarter, while only 1 in 20 persons in treatment is a female. So there's a huge, basically, problem of access to quality treatment and counseling for women in particular.
I'm really concerned. When you say that Nigeria has 3 times the world average, that's a disturbing figure. But even more disturbing is the fact that we don't seem to be all agreed on the dangers of some of these drugs. If you were to go, for instance, I know that in recent times there's been a huge crackdown on the part of the NDLEA, which is the body of Nigeria, the arm of government, or will I say the institution of government saddled with the responsibility of ensuring drug control in Nigeria, especially illegal drugs. There's been a huge crackdown. Only yesterday, a medical doctor was arrested, selling cookies laced with cannabis. And there were, if you were to read the comments beneath that particular story, for a number of young people, they saw absolutely nothing wrong with it. So if we're saying increasingly, and we're suspecting that our figures are going to go up by as much as 40%, what we're trying to do now is raise awareness, tell people that, this is not good. How much work do you think we need to do with changing perceptions, especially with how drug use, or what is being classified as recreational drugs and what is being classified as real hard drugs, as the lines seem to be shifting, how do you think we're going to be affecting perception and discouraging people from drug use?
That's a very good question. I wish I had an equally good answer. The truth is that the specificities of drug use in Nigeria are very complex, and are very complex exactly also from that perspective of how do we actually address the preventive aspect, the preventive intervention, especially in schools, but also how to reach out of school children, for example. And the reason is exactly also linked to the type of drug use that we're seeing. Cannabis.
I'm going to have to take a break at this point, so sorry about that. No. I'll let you finish your thoughts. Please hold them, and then we'll come back after this break. Please stay with us. But some of the issues we're considering as the world is going to be celebrating World Drugs Day on the 26th of June. Dr. Oliver Stolpe, country representative of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, is here with us in the studio. And you're just about to answer that question, which also borders relatively on the relationship between money and saving lives and recreational use of drugs and how to change the perception of people.
Right. Yes, as I was about to say, changing perception of people is quite complex, especially in Nigeria at the present moment, because we have on the one hand a very, very extensive cannabis use, about 10.6 million, as we heard before. And the second most used type of drug are pharmaceutical opioids like codeine, cough syrups, and tramadol. So all of these are not your typical hard drugs in the sense of cocaine or heroin. So that already in itself makes it a little bit more difficult to communicate effectively, especially with the young population, about the health-related dangers that are undoubtedly there. The second issue that is a worldwide issue, and we're going to be launching tomorrow the World Drug Report, which will place specific attention on this issue, is that cannabis, in the terms of its strength, its potency, has quadrupled in the past years. But regardless of that, actually the perceptions of the danger and the health implications of the use of cannabis, especially the prolonged use of cannabis, have been going down. So we have these kind of contradictions at the moment, and they are very much at play in Nigeria, where people often use pharmaceutical products, which of course in many circumstances are actually healthy for you, and cannabis, which is generally considered less and less dangerous than it actually is. And to intervene in that space is quite a challenge. I fully agree.
What are some of the, I do not know if there are other examples of countries who have had this sort of challenge at some point or another, and maybe developed a template. What are some of the templates that you might have seen have been at work in other places? Do you think perhaps, we'll soon get to the conversation of, you know, the cannabis market, the fact that there is also a medical use for cannabis, and that there are some states in Nigeria, particularly Ondo State, which is thinking that we need to tap into that market for the resources. But looking at the general template, the general situation which you've already described, and the particular problem which is peculiar to us, do you think that there is anywhere we can copy a template from, or an example we can learn from, in terms of how to intervene, considering the fact that we have a real youth bulge?
Right. What we are promoting very strongly, and that is really consensus international good practice at the level of the General Assembly, is the so-called balanced approach. Basically a tripod which has a strong enforcement, strong treatment and counseling and aftercare, and strong prevention. All of the legs of that tripod need to be equally long, equally well-resourced, and equally seriously pursued by government. The Nigerian government, and actually all the relevant Nigerian stakeholders, which involve a lot of NGOs and other non-state actors, the entire health community, for example, have been extremely busy over the past 18 to 24 months in developing the new National Drug Control Master Plan. And that is exactly a translation of that general approach, that philosophy of the balanced approach, into a concrete plan of action for the years 2021 to 2025. And we're very much looking forward that in a few days from now, on the 26th, His Excellency President Buhari is hopefully going to be launching that master plan. And I think it will give us that blueprint to move forward in a more coherent and convincing and effective way.
What are your thoughts when a number of countries begin to legalize cannabis, when there is recreational cannabis? What has been the stance of the UNODC on that?
Well, first of all, we are not the policy-making body. We are an implementer of the policy that are being determined by member states. But for now, the situation is very clear. We have 3 drug conventions which are regulating essentially this entire space. And under this convention, legalizing for recreational use is simply not possible. There are countries that have done so, and they have essentially opted out of certain provisions of that convention and are not presently meeting their legal obligations under those conventions. It's a completely different issue of discussing the legalization of production of cannabis for medical or scientific purposes. That is possible. So first of all, I think that distinction needs to be made very clear to the public at present, because I'm not sure it is entirely clear. And secondly, we need to think very carefully about taking such a massive step. I think we have heard the NELEA chairman, who has been very adamant at raising concerns about this proposal. I would say that certainly at the moment when we are seeing already in related areas, for example, the regulation and control of pharmaceutical opioids, huge gaps in terms of how easy it is to access them, how difficult it is, the state finds it to control all these semi-formal and informal markets, that maybe essentially creating a situation for cannabis where we might face similar regulatory challenges is not necessarily the right moment.
Well, it's going to be a real tricky one, because some people will say, in any case, we already have the problem. The problem is there. The farms are there. The amount of Cannabis alone, which NDLEA has seized in the last number of months, I mean, over 2 million kilograms of cannabis alone. Some people will say, instead of burning it, assuming we had an industry where we converted some of that to, for pharmaceutical use, it could have brought some needed revenue. How do you think a country like Nigeria, which is struggling with revenue, and also which has a non-drug problem, and their fears that could also be what is fueling the violence which is seen in different parts of the country. How do you think a country like Nigeria can strike the balance?
Well, we should not be myopic in the sense of the economic impact. Yes, there might be short-term gains to be made, or mid-term gains, I should rather say, because short-term, you cannot just take seized cannabis and sell it because it hasn't medical quality to be sold. It hasn't been grown in the asserted manners that medical cannabis needs to be grown in. But even that aside, I think we need to be very clear that the revenue issue is only one part of the story. The other part of the story is who is using drugs presently and what socioeconomic impact that has on themselves and their families. We're looking essentially at the most predominant use in the age group 25 to 39. These are people who should be productive. These are people often using all sorts of drugs for coping mechanisms. But those coping mechanisms also have the side effect that they're slowing themselves down. They are less motivated. We have the statistics for that. About 71% of the drug users that we interviewed for the 2018 drug use survey responded that they had missed out in work or had missed out in school or had actually suffered negative consequences, including losing work or dropping out of school. So there is a huge economic impact of massive drug use as we see it right now. And we should not be looking only at the short-term revenue gain, but we should be also looking at it. Do we have the system to reduce the so-called recreational use of drugs? The non-medical use of pharmaceutical opioids, the use of cannabis, heroin, and cocaine that it has presently, and also including in economic terms.
It's a very tricky one. How is the message of prevention being received in schools? I don't know if you've been involved in any schools campaign, but I don't know what the general opinion or some of the opinion you have been able to curate from, say, interventions in schools have been.
They have been really excellent, and this is one of the part of our program which I personally care most for. It's a school-based prevention program called Unplugged. We have rolled it out in about 100 or so government colleges, federal government colleges. We are now working with a number of states actually doing the same at secondary school level in state-owned schools. And the impact has been absolutely encouraging. So first of all, it's a life skill program. So we're not just trying to talk to youth about drugs and the negative impacts, because sorry to say so, that is often a method that doesn't really work. What you need to give youth is basically the basic emotional tools, the emotional intelligence, the life skills, the skill of how to deal with pressure, how to do with group dynamics, how to do with stress at home or in school, in order to be able to become more resilient, essentially, to taking drugs, and even if they do take drugs, to do it in a more conscious way, so that they're actually avoiding addiction. So there is a lot of positive response, and actually in the schools where the program has been running out, not only we have seen a delayed initiation to the use of drugs, we have also seen a greater readiness of pupils caring for each other and involving counselors at schools when they observe drug use issues. And in general, which is of course a nice side effect, academic performance has been improving in those schools as well. So the teachers have been extremely positive about it. About 600 trained teachers in deploying this Unplugged program. And we're now working with the presidency under a program called At-Risk Children that has been launched very recently, to now look also at the out-of-school children, because obviously we can't reach them in the classroom, so we need to reach them otherwise. And we have identified sports as the vehicle to do so. So we will try to develop this program. We have already been running this program in South Africa and Brazil, and now we are getting ready to do the same in Nigeria.
Well, the approach is very interesting. It's a totally different approach from what I learned. And it's very interesting to see how that is working. But let me quickly flip this now. Perhaps my colleagues have questions. Gentlemen.
Yeah, I mean, listening to some of what you said now, what did you identify or notice about, because there are people who we've approached, but they rather not talk about it. It could be parents sharing certain things with their words. How significant is that part? Did you notice, and to what degree, persons who are in denial, and how significant do we address that such that we also contribute to improving all of the statistics?
Right. Now, the issue of stigma that you're basically addressing in your question is very important. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, it's particularly important for women and girls. They seem to be suffering far more from stigma, coming forward, being honest about their drug use issue, being ready to access actually a treatment center. Just imagine even the mere fact of taking public transport to the other part of town to enter a drug treatment center that is identified as such might be impossible for many of the women and girls in Nigeria. And that affects especially women and girls in the north, I would say, because there some of these stigma factors are more at operation, so to speak, than what we see in the south. But regardless of that, stigma is in general a big problem for drug users to come forward. It prevents them from accessing help. It prevents them from getting information. And we are trying very hard to work with a group of NGOs in the setup of drug treatment centers. We've also helped, and I'm extremely pleased about that, with the creation of a drug helpline, which actually gives the opportunity to call help in the privacy of your room. So you're avoiding some of those dynamics of stigma. And that has been starting especially around the COVID-19 related lockdowns, because it became more difficult for all drug users that were already in treatment or accessing counseling to have that access. And there were about 130 professionals that had been trained by UNODC. And they came together, they volunteered, and they created essentially this network of drug counselors that were providing now over-the-phone assistance. And this is something that I think we need now to build on. We need to have a national drug helpline, and this is something that we're trying very hard to work with our counterparts in government to achieve.
I want to assume, Mr. Stoppe, that the reasons for drug use would vary from country to country. What can we trace? Because, I mean, you've talked about how difficult it has been to achieve that third leg of preventing drug use. Perhaps if people knew why the problem started and has grown over the years, perhaps that might be a good place to start, because if there is no impetus for drug use, there would probably be less drug use in the country, and consequently be able to drive down the need, for use of drug. What is it, especially in Nigeria, maybe you may want to draw examples from other nations as well, that makes people take drugs?
Well, there's no one specific reason. We need to be very clear that makes people use drugs. There might be some biological preconditions that make people more susceptible to the use of drugs and more susceptible to becoming addicts. But across all nations, we are facing a world drug problem. So it's nothing that is specific to Nigeria. Some of the reasons that are at work in Nigeria are specific indeed. They are shared by other African nations, by other developing countries. First of all, of course, we have the general issue that we find in particular amongst our young populations, which is simply curiosity. But beyond that, we have specific factors in Nigeria, for example, the hardships that many young people face. For example, if I'm in university and my university closes down about half of my educational period, I'm condemned to idleness, and that is obviously a period where I'm becoming very susceptible to deal with that stress, to cope with it, to start using drugs. Also, economic hardship, simple escapism, we will very often see. And there is also the very harsh conditions of work that some of our citizens are facing in Nigeria that actually makes them to use drugs simply to get it through the day. There's a very interesting documentary that was done last year for the World Drug Day, in which a commercial sex worker basically reported that if she takes no drugs, she can satisfy 7 clients, and if she takes tramadol, she can have up to 15 clients. And so it becomes an economic decision for her to essentially get her job, if you want to call it a job, done. And of course, the effects are horrific on her health, on her well-being, and on her opportunities to get her life in order.
Well, you have talked about how difficult, the three-pronged approach, and you were saying that right now we're doing well on one of the prongs, which is, I don't know what to say if it's prevention or, but there's a crackdown. I don't know where that fits in the tripod. But in terms of getting help, how high is it a priority from what you have seen? Is this something that we have invested quite a bit of money in, or do we need help in that area?
Well, first of all, the crackdown, that one I would put into the enforcement area. And that is very important. That is a traditional area of intervention for UNODC. This is where our partnership with NDLEA is really at work. We have trained thousands of NDLEA and customs officers in the skills of how to interdict drugs, how to conduct intelligence-led operations, how to conduct financial investigations, how to prosecute effectively, and so on and so forth.
And I'm sure you must be really proud right now.
Well, certainly it is very encouraging to see how these skills that we have helped to build seem now to be really put at work.
Yeah.
Now, in the terms of the treatment side, I think we definitely need more investment. I think we need to come together as the international community, individual philanthropists, and the private sector to make a significant investment in this area, because if we are estimating roughly that we have around close to 3 million people living with a drug use disorder, and we have probably only around 1,000 plus or minus treatment facility capacity, then we see the gap is massive and more needs to be done. And that is, of course, an investment that first and foremost needs to be done by the Federal Ministry of Health, the Nigerian government, but others need to come to help as well.
It's a fine place to leave it. Thank you so much for the work that you do, and thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Oliver Stolpe is a country representative, United Nations Office on Drug and Crime, that's the UNODC. And we're talking about the drug problem ahead of World Drug Day. Please stay with us. Sunrise Daily will be back. Indeed, we'll always have time for your feedback. We have a few this morning. Dimi Alalade talking about fighting drug use. He says, with the current situation in the country, drug abuse will definitely be on the increase. There are no jobs to engage the youths. Most of our institutions that are supposed to be monitoring the illegal trafficking and use of hard substance are compromised or not even in existence. NDLEA is trying its best, but a lot more needs to be done in the areas of managing drug abuse.
This one's coming from Clement. He's talking about Twitter suspension in Nigeria. It says, President Muhammadu Buhari's tweets on the Nigerian civil war was an individual's opinion and did not represent the generality of Nigerians. He contravened Twitter's operational code, and Twitter was right to have taken it down. But whether Twitter has not done the needful in its business operations in Nigeria is another thing entirely. Twitter has been banned/suspended. Perhaps Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, and other social media platforms will follow suit. And after that, maybe the mainstream media. But why is the FGN scared about citizens' exercise of their freedom of speech?
That's a question. Well, look how Jagbe says about the same issue. The incorporation of social media giants in Nigeria is a welcome development if it's going to be economically beneficial to the nation. But why only Twitter at this time? It's lucid that these decisions are afterthoughts. The federal government should face the imminent farming and insecurity challenges bedeviling the country and settle whatever domestic issues they have with Jack, not at the detriment of Nigerians.
And Adenike, we're talking about Twitter suspension, says we're a nation governed by a constitution and also a nation of intellectuals. I can understand why the government think they can fleece everyone of a non-existent offense. It is obvious the federal government has made up its mind to conflate the use of Twitter as a platform for free speech and its use to propagate anti-state rhetorics by a few minority. Twitter has measures in place to remove the latter from its platform. This is what the government should be looking at, not seem to be attempting to stifle free speech. And this one is from John Ugolo. It's a pretty long email talking about Twitter use. Says, an ECOWAS ruling in Nigeria. He says, I would like to suggest that the federal government should be careful in handling the interlocutory order of the ECOWAS court. It may be difficult to manage the international perception index of the Twitter ban and disobedience to the order of the ECOWAS court. The proper approach should be for the federal government to temporarily suspend the plan to prosecute users of Twitter while the deliberation with Twitter is ongoing and in obedience to the ECOWAS court ruling. This will assist in managing perceptions of the international community on the issue of Twitter ban. Nigeria is not an island, and we need to be careful of implications of our local actions on international trade and inflow of FDI to Nigeria. A country that needs FDI, that's foreign direct investment, and foreign grants and loans, should avoid decisions that could be perceived as draconian. God bless Nigeria. Well, that's from John Ogolo. Free advice, it would seem, to the federal government. Adenike did say that we're a nation of intellectuals. So your comments will always be very relevant to us, and we'll take as many as we can. Gentlemen.
Good points there. And yeah, those are some of the indices they actually consider if they need to invest in your country. So, and I like that last part. God bless Nigeria. I can imagine people saying that with pride.
Oh, yeah, well, but the one thing else that I would love is the last line of the pledge. So help me God.
Well, that's how we leave the show this morning. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogunyusuf.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.
I'm Chamberlain Uso. We'll see you next time.